Have you ever felt lost in your own life? As if your actions, decisions, and words belonged to someone else, and you were merely a spectator? Imagine waking up each morning, putting on a mask that, over time, has become so heavy that you've forgotten what your true self looks like underneath. You stand before the mirror and wonder who you really are, beyond all the roles you play for others. This painful disconnect between who you truly are and who you pretend to be creates a deep wound in your soul, a wound you may not even be able to name. I understand this feeling. It's like living in a house with many rooms but only using the hallway, for fear of opening the door to the other spaces where your true self might be waiting. This pain of being separated from your authentic self is like a quiet background noise in your life, sometimes barely audible, sometimes deafening. You feel empty, exhausted, as if something essential has been taken from you, without even knowing what. This is a feeling that Carl Rogers, one of the most important humanistic psychologists, called detachment from one's organic experience. It may sound complex, but it's simply a disconnect from your true nature. The good news is that there is a path to reconnect with yourself, a path we can walk together. In this video, I'll show you how Carl Rogers' concepts can help you reconnect with yourself, rediscover your authenticity, and build a life that truly reflects who you are. It won't be an easy path, but I promise that each step will bring you closer to an inner freedom and fulfillment you may have stopped dreaming of. So sit back, take a deep breath, and let me guide you on this journey to your true nature. Carl Rogers, born in 1902, was an American psychologist who revolutionized our understanding of human nature and the therapeutic process. In an era dominated by Freudian psychoanalysis and Skinnerian behaviorism, Rogers dared to propose a radically different approach, later called person-centered therapy. Instead of viewing individuals through the lens of unconscious drives or conditioning, Rogers perceived in everyone an innate tendency toward growth, self-actualization, and mental well-being. This fundamental idea, called the tendency toward actualization, is comparable to a seed that, under favorable conditions, naturally aspires to become a tree. Rogers believed that each of us possesses this natural inclination to grow, to become a more complete version of ourselves. The problem is that the conditions in which we grow up often do not foster this natural development. Imagine a young child spontaneously expressing their emotions, curiosity, and creativity. Now imagine that each time he encounters criticism, rejection, or indifference, over time the child learns to conceal these aspects of his personality, creating what Rogers called value conditions. These are unwritten rules that stipulate, you will only be loved and accepted if you fulfill certain conditions. These value criteria become a filter through which we interpret our experiences, accepting only those that fit our self-image, an image shaped by the expectations of others. This leads to what Rogers called incongruity, or the dissonance between our true nature and the ideal we have created to merit love and acceptance. This incongruity is the source of our psychological suffering, our feelings of emptiness and alienation. I'd like to pause here. Think about it. When was the last time you felt completely yourself? When were you able to freely express your thoughts, feelings, and desires without filtering them through the fear of judgment? I know these questions can be difficult, and the answers aren't always obvious, especially if you've been disconnected from your inner voice for a long time. But asking yourself this question is already a first step toward change. Naming what you're experiencing, even a feeling of disconnection from yourself, is the beginning of the healing process. I encourage you to share it in the comments, using a simple sentence that begins with, "I feel disconnected from myself when..." It can be something very simple and sincere. Your words can not only help you better understand your experience, but also create a sense of belonging for others who feel lost like you. Remember, you are not alone in this experience. And now, as we continue our exploration of Carl Rogers' approach, Rogers identified 3 essential conditions that facilitate a return to oneself and access to what he called a fully realized person. The first is authenticity, or congruence. This is the ability to be in touch with one's inner experience and to express it without masks or pretense. Authenticity does not mean impulsively expressing everything that comes to mind, but rather the awareness and acceptance of our inner states, as well as the ability to communicate them responsibly. Imagine yourself as a clear river, where every stone and every fish is visible. There is no need to hide, filter, or control what flows. It is a state of being where one does not have to pretend to feel something other than what one feels, nor to conceal one's true thoughts behind a mask of social conventions. The second condition is unconditional positive regard or acceptance. This is the deep conviction that every person has intrinsic value, regardless of their behavior, thoughts, or feelings. It means seeing others with respect and kindness, without judgment or trying to change them. It's like watching a sunrise. You don't judge it, you don't try to change it, you simply let it be what it is and appreciate its beauty. In relationships with others, this means creating a space where everyone can be themselves without fear of rejection or criticism. The third condition is empathic understanding. This is the ability to enter another person's world, to see reality through their eyes without losing awareness of your own individuality. It's not about pity or even sympathy, but about a deep understanding of the other person's point of view. Imagine putting on someone else's glasses and seeing the world as they see it, with their history, values, fears, and hopes. It's the ability to say, I understand why you feel the way you do and why you act the way you do, even if I would feel or act differently. These three conditions, authenticity, unconditional acceptance, and empathic understanding, create a climate conducive to flourishing and personal growth. Rogers spoke of a therapeutic climate, but these same principles apply to all relationships, between parents and children, between partners, between friends, and even with ourselves. Yes, we can be authentic, kind, and empathetic toward ourselves. We can create an inner space where our true nature can emerge and flourish. How does this translate into practice? Imagine experiencing a difficult emotion, such as anger. Instead of immediately suppressing it or criticizing yourself, you can first acknowledge and accept it. Yes, I am angry. This is a normal reaction in this situation. Then, you can try to understand the origin of this anger, which may prove more complex than it seems. Is it a reaction to a violation of your boundaries? Is it an expression of frustration with unmet needs? Or does it mask a deeper fear or sadness? This process of inner dialogue, based on authenticity, acceptance, and empathy, helps us reconnect with our true nature, and over time, leads to greater congruence. That is, a correspondence between our experience and our awareness of it. This brings us to one of the most important concepts in Rogers' theory, the fully functioning person. This is not an ideal state or a final stage of development, but rather a continuous process of becoming. A fully functioning person is open to their experiences, lives each moment fully and consciously, trusts their organic appraisal process, the inner compass that tells us what is good or bad for our development, is creative and lives in harmony with themselves and others. This sounds like an ideal we can aspire to, but it is important to remember that, for Rogers, it is not about perfection, but about direction. Now that we've learned the fundamental concepts of Rogers' theory, let's see how to apply them to our daily lives. The first step is to develop our inner awareness. We can start with simple questions. How am I feeling right now? What do I need? What do I really think about this situation? It sounds simple, but for many of us who have gotten into the habit of ignoring or suppressing our inner states, it can be difficult. Journaling, meditating, or talking to a trusted person can be helpful. It's important to approach this process with curiosity and kindness, not with criticism or judgment. The second step is to practice self-acceptance. This doesn't mean loving everything about yourself or accepting all your behaviors, but rather acknowledging your experience as it is, without trying to change it or run away from it. We can start with the affirmation, I accept myself as I am right now, with all my strengths and weaknesses. It's a simple exercise, but repeating it regularly can transform our relationship with ourselves over time. The third step is to develop self-empathy. Imagine talking to yourself as you would to a friend in a difficult situation. Instead of criticizing and judging yourself, offer yourself understanding and support. It's okay to feel this way. This is a difficult situation, and you're doing your best. This practice, also called self-compassion, is a powerful tool for transformation. The fourth step is to express yourself authentically. Start small, sharing your deepest thoughts and feelings with trusted individuals. Over time, you can extend your circle of authenticity to other aspects of your life. Remember that authenticity doesn't mean a lack of filter or accountability for your words and actions, but rather consistency between your inner experience and your outward expression. The fifth step is to create relationships based on Rogers' three conditions. Seek out authentic, tolerant, and empathetic people, and strive to offer the same qualities in your relationships. Such relationships become spaces where you can be yourself and thrive. The process of personal healing is neither easy nor quick. It requires patience, courage, and perseverance. There will be times when you feel like falling back into old patterns, hiding behind a mask and avoiding difficult emotions. This is normal. It's important not to view these moments as failures, but as an integral part of the process. Rogers emphasized that change is not linear, but rather a spiral, where we sometimes return to the same points, but with a higher level of awareness and integration. One of the biggest challenges in the process of personal transformation is managing anxiety. Anxiety arises when we begin to question our old patterns and beliefs, when we dare to be more authentic, when we risk rejection or misunderstanding. Rogers viewed anxiety as a natural component of change, not something to be avoided at all costs. He encouraged us to acknowledge anxiety and move through it, rather than avoid it. Another challenge is managing the expectations of others. When we begin to be more ourselves, it can surprise or even irritate those who were used to our former personality. Some relationships may evolve or even end, which can be painful, but it also paves the way for new and more authentic connections. The third challenge is maintaining a practice of mindfulness and authenticity in stressful or difficult situations. In these moments, it's easy to revert to old habits rather than stay connected to our inner experience. A regular mindfulness practice can help develop the ability to remain attentive, even in challenging circumstances. Despite these challenges, the process of returning to oneself brings immense benefits. Greater authenticity leads to deeper and more fulfilling relationships, because others can connect with your true nature, not a facade. A better connection to your feelings and needs allows you to make decisions more aligned with your true nature and values. Greater self-acceptance reduces self-criticism and self-worry, leading to greater peace and contentment. Life becomes richer and more fulfilling because you are more open to your experiences, rather than defending or avoiding them. Rogers' therapeutic approach, known as client-centered therapy or person-centered therapy, revolutionized the practice of psychotherapy. Instead of viewing the therapist as an expert who diagnoses and treats, Rogers saw them as a facilitator who creates the conditions conducive to the natural process of healing and growth. In traditional approaches, the therapist is active, directive, and interpretive, while the client is a passive recipient of expertise. In Rogers' approach, the roles are reversed. The client is the expert on their own experience and guides the process, while the therapist offers presence, understanding, and acceptance. A key element of Rogerian therapy is a therapeutic relationship based on three conditions: authenticity, unconditional positive regard, and empathic understanding. Rogers believed that it is the relationship itself that heals, not techniques or interpretations. This radical break with previous therapeutic approaches laid the foundation for many contemporary forms of therapy, such as cognitive behavioral therapy, Gestalt therapy, and acceptance and commitment therapy. Research confirms the effectiveness of Rogers' approach. It turns out that the quality of the therapeutic relationship is one of the most important predictors of successful therapy, regardless of the techniques or theoretical approaches used. In other words, what Rogers discovered and put into practice more than half a century ago is now confirmed by contemporary scientific research. Moreover, Rogers' principles have applications far beyond the therapy office. They are applied in education, where a teacher-student relationship based on respect and empathy fosters learning and development. They are used in management, where leaders who demonstrate authenticity and empathy create more engaged and productive teams. They are implemented in medicine, where doctors who listen to and understand their patients achieve better treatment outcomes. They are even used in international diplomacy, where an empathetic understanding of the other party's perspective can lead to the resolution of long-standing conflicts. Although Rogers' ideas were developed in the mid-20th century, they remain remarkably relevant, even more so today. In the age of social media, where it is easy to create and present idealized versions of ourselves, the need for authenticity is becoming increasingly urgent. In a society that often values individuals based on their achievements, appearance, or financial status, unconditional acceptance is a rare and precious gift. In a world marked by division and polarization, empathetically understanding another's perspective is essential for building relationships and fostering social cohesion. Rogers did not offer simplistic solutions or techniques, but rather a way to be able to transform our lives and relationships. His approach requires the courage to be oneself, the kindness to accept others as they are, and the open-mindedness to understand perspectives different from our own. The path is fraught with obstacles, but as Rogers himself said, paradoxically, it is only by accepting myself as I am that I can change. The process of personal growth is an endless journey. It is a constant voyage of discovery and expression of one's true nature, but each step taken brings greater freedom, deeper connections with others, and a richer life experience. As Rogers said, a successful life is a journey, not a state. It is a direction, not a destination. In summary, Carl Rogers' approach offers us a path back to ourselves, to our authenticity, and to a full and fulfilling life. It rests on simple yet profound principles: authenticity, unconditional acceptance, and empathic understanding. Putting these principles into practice in our relationships with ourselves and others leads us to greater harmony, a better understanding of our feelings and needs, deeper and more satisfying relationships, and ultimately, a more authentic and meaningful life. This path is not easy. It requires courage, patience, and perseverance, but each step brings us closer to a richer and more authentic life. As Rogers said, life, at its best, is a continuous process of becoming, not a finite state. If this message resonated with you, if Carl Rogers' ideas echoed your own, and if you yearn for a deeper connection with yourself, I invite you to join me on this journey. I'm not here to offer miracle solutions or ready-made answers, but rather to guide you in discovering and expressing your true nature. On this channel, we're creating a space where we can explore the wisdom of Rogers' approach together and apply it to our daily lives. This isn't about superficial advice or quick fixes, but about a profound transformation that begins with authenticity, acceptance, and empathy. If you'd like to be part of this community, if you'd like to receive more content that will support you in your quest for authenticity, I invite you to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. This isn't just a gesture of support from me as the creator, but above all, a commitment to yourself, an affirmation of your desire to live a richer and more authentic life. I am committed to being there for you, offering relevant, practical content that respects your personal journey. Together, we can build a community rooted in Rogers' values, a community that supports the growth and fulfillment of each of its members. Thank you for listening to this episode. See you soon. In the age of social media and digital communication, Rogers' concepts are more relevant than ever. It's easy to create an idealized image of ourselves online, presenting only the aspects we deem acceptable or desirable. This widens the gap between our true nature and the image we project. We can have hundreds, even thousands of friends or followers, and yet feel profoundly alone, because these relationships often fail to meet our fundamental need to be seen, understood, and accepted for who we truly are. Rogers teaches us that genuine connection arises from authenticity, not perfection. He encourages us to drop our masks and show ourselves as we are, with all our imperfections and wounds, because only in this way can we experience true connection with others. In a world that often values superficial relationships and quick fixes to emotional problems, Rogers' approach offers profound and lasting change. It's not simply about feeling better in the short term, but about fundamentally transforming our perception of ourselves and the world. As Rogers said, I have found that when I can help a person feel valued, heard, and understood, something wonderful happens in their ability to open themselves up to the process of change. It is also worth noting that Rogers' approach resonates with many spiritual and philosophical traditions. His emphasis on accepting what is recalls the Buddhist concept of mindfulness and non-judgment. His belief in the natural human tendency toward growth and self-realization finds parallels in humanistic philosophy and various spiritual traditions. His commitment to authenticity and self-truth is reflected in existential philosophy and the concept of authentic living. These parallels are not coincidental. Rogers drew inspiration from diverse sources, integrating them into a coherent approach to human development and well-being. Moreover, recent research in neurobiology confirms many of his insights. Discoveries about neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to change and adapt throughout life, reinforce his belief in a continuous process of growth and transformation. Research on mirror neurons provides a biological basis for empathy, which Rogers considered essential to the therapeutic relationship. Discoveries in epigenetics demonstrate how the social environment can influence gene expression, consistent with Rogers's emphasis on an environment conducive to optimal development. These connections between Rogers's humanistic psychology and modern science attest to the relevance and depth of his understanding of human nature. In conclusion, I would like to share a personal reflection. Carl Rogers' theory and practice may seem simple, even obvious, but putting them into practice every day presents a significant challenge. Being fully oneself, accepting others as they are, and striving for empathic understanding. These are all ideals that require constant practice and commitment, but every step in this direction brings us closer to greater freedom, deeper relationships, and a more fulfilling life. As Rogers wrote, "The greatest gift I can receive is to be seen, heard, understood, and touched. The greatest gift I can give is to see, hear, understand, and touch others. When this happens, a bond is created." In a world often marked by division and misunderstanding, Rogers' teachings offer us the path to forging such bonds, with ourselves and with others. And perhaps this is his most precious legacy. I invite you to reflect on your own journey toward authenticity. What masks do you wear every day? What value systems did you internalize during your childhood that now limit your development? In what situations do you feel most like yourself? And in what situations do you feel least like yourself? What actions can you take today to live more authentically? Remember that, according to Rogers' vision, becoming yourself is not a one-time event, but a continuous process. Every realization, every act of self-acceptance, every expression of authenticity is a step on this path. And even if you sometimes stray, even if you fall back into your old patterns, simply being aware of it is progress. As Rogers said, paradoxically, it is precisely the acceptance of what is that allows for change. This journey of self-discovery is not easy, but it is worth every effort, because it leads to a life that truly reflects who you are, a life that embodies your true nature and values, and that is the most satisfying and fulfilling form of existence. In light of these reflections, I encourage you to take on a small challenge next week. Choose an area of your life, perhaps a relationship with a particular person, a work situation, or the way you treat yourself, and try applying Rogers' 3 principles to it: authenticity, unconditional acceptance, and empathic understanding. Observe what happens when you allow yourself to be more authentic, when you accept yourself or others unconditionally, when you genuinely seek to understand another person's perspective. You can record your observations and reflections in a journal to better understand this process of change. Remember that the important thing is not so much to apply these principles perfectly as to learn and grow. As Rogers said, the only person who never changes is the one who already thinks they are perfect. This openness to learning and change is at the heart of the Rogerian approach to life. Cultivating authenticity in our lives fosters creativity and spontaneity. Freed from appearances and the expectations of others, we can unleash our energy to express our creativity and innovate. Rogers observed that people who are more open to their experiences and less defensive are also more creative and adaptable. They are able to transcend established patterns of thought and action, to move beyond what should or must be, and to explore new possibilities. This creative adaptation is essential for solving personal and societal problems. In a world facing unprecedented challenges, from climate change to social inequality, we need people who can think and act differently. The authenticity advocated by Rogers is therefore not only a path to personal fulfillment, but also to positive social transformation. If this message resonated with you, if Carl Rogers' ideas echoed your own, and if you yearn for a deeper connection with yourself, I invite you to join me on this journey. I'm not here to offer miracle solutions or ready-made answers, but rather to guide you in discovering and expressing your true nature. On this channel, we're creating a space where we can explore the wisdom of Rogers' approach together and apply it to our daily lives. This isn't about superficial advice or quick fixes, but about a profound transformation that begins with authenticity, acceptance, and empathy. If you'd like to be part of this community, if you'd like to receive more content that will support you in your quest for authenticity, I invite you to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. This isn't just a gesture of support from me as the creator, but above all, a commitment to yourself, an affirmation of your desire to live a richer and more authentic life. I am committed to being there for you, offering in-depth, practical content that respects your personal journey. Together, we can build a community rooted in Roger's values, a community that supports the growth and fulfillment of each of its members. Thank you for joining me on this episode. Remember, true change begins with self-acceptance. See you soon for another shared journey toward a fuller, more complete humanity.